Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So this one is going to be slightly different. If you've been on my channel for a while, then you'll remember last year I made a video called The Big Plan, wherein I theorized what I suspected Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni and Lucasfilm are doing with The Mandalorian and its spin-offs. In that video I said that they're slowly building to a monumental galactic event, one that's going to accumulate in the form of an endgame style movie or TV show that brings everything together. It's all building up to it. Well, we just had D23 this past weekend, and as you're going to see in this video, it seems as though my theory is coming to fruition. Now, if you watched the video I put out last year, or others I've made on the subject, then you'll know when it comes to what we like to call the Mando-verse, I'm a big proponent of the galactic threat theory. That is the idea that while the Imperial Remnant are working on their cloning project, the ones we saw in The Mandalorian Chapter 12 that will eventually bring Palpatine back, a larger galactic threat looms in the unknown regions. And in my opinion, as a Timothy Zahn fan, that threat is the Grisk, the canon version of the Yuuzhan Vong. Now this is something that Thrawn and the Chiss Ascendancy knew about for a very long time, and it just so happens to answer the question of where Ezra and Thrawn went at the end of Star Wars Rebels when they were launched into hyperspace by the Purrgil. Wherever they went, I suspect they were forced to work together, and they're preparing to warn the galaxy of this impending doom, the threat of the Grisk. Now it's worth noting that by the time of the sequel trilogy about 30 years down the line, we know the Grisk were dealt with, and when the First Order came into power, rising from the Remnant, they ensured the invasion of the Grisk would never happen again. And there's even proof of this in The Last Jedi, where a group of mute alien navigators called the Attendants from an ancient insectoid species that was affiliated with the Grisk are enslaved by Supreme Leader Snoke. We see them in the throne room scene, so if you ever wondered who they are, they're the Attendants. And their job is to look out for any Grisk invasion from the unknown regions. Now let's get back to Mando. So up until this past weekend, the Grisk idea was just a theory and nothing more. We didn't know for certain if that's what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were doing. But then, an official synopsis for the Ahsoka series dropped on the D23 website. This was literally just a couple of days ago, and it confirms that Ahsoka will investigate a, quote, emerging threats to a vulnerable galaxy. This is almost certainly code for the Grisk, and the key to finding out where Ezra and Thrawn have been. But the crazy thing, my dear Mandalorians, is it's not limited to the Ahsoka show. And I believe they're going to be exploring this first in The Mandalorian Season 3, because the order of release is Mando 3, Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, but one thing at a time. So the teaser trailer that we got was very eerie. Now Variety spoke with Pedro Pascal and he teased new planets and a very different kind of season, but just like a lot of the cast and crew who spoke about it, he couldn't reveal too much or what he means by this. Now I will say from here on out, big spoiler warning, we are going to be discussing some of the leaks. Over the summer a couple of months ago, on the Reddit Star Wars leaks page, there was a massive plot dump, and in that post, OP claims that Din is going to find his way to the unknown regions after hearing a rumour of a planet populated by dark side users of the Yoda species. What he ends up finding there, according to the leak, are ghoulish, ghostly looking Grogus, but they're not the biggest threat. Grogu and Din are then chased away from the planet by a mysterious force. So setting the evil Yodas aside for a moment, if Jon and Dave are taking us to the unknown regions in Mando, it's almost certainly to connect it to Ahsoka and the wider story of the Grisk. But here is a crazy theory. Are you ready for this? What if Din and Grogu accidentally run into Ezra out there, but they don't understand the significance of who he is? After all, Ahsoka never told Din about Ezra or Thrawn. So what if Ezra and or Thrawn play into the story earlier than we thought, and Ahsoka and Sabine's journey in the Ahsoka show ends up being very different to what we expected? But in either case, it looks as though the unknown regions are going to be explored in Mando and Ahsoka. But what about the third spin-off, Skeleton Crew? This show is one big question mark. We don't really know too much about it. I have been covering the news for it over the last couple of days, but we still have practically no information on the plot itself. And Jude Law even says that John Watts, Chris Ford, Jon Favreau, they're all keeping it such a secret that Jude can't even tell his kids about it. But we can work out little details, and we do have a hunch about what it's going to explore. For example, it's been marketed and labelled as Stranger Things in Space, with 4 children lost out there trying to find their way home. This all screams unknown regions, which could potentially introduce the big threat that's going to be teased in The Mandalorian and the Ahsoka show. But I don't think we're going to see the Grisk for a while. Jon and Dave are going to flesh this out over the course of many shows, and in this way, they're creating a puzzle, so to speak. Each show, each season from here on out, is one piece of it, until eventually we see the wider picture. I think it's all leading to a war between the Grisk, the New Republic, our allies, and even the Imperial Remnant and the eventual rise of the First Order. And if this is the case, then by now Thrawn and Ezra have joined forces, and as many of us suspected, Thrawn was never meant to be the villain of this story, but rather a central part of it, where parties have to set aside their differences when confronted with the largest threat the galaxy's ever seen. This is truly going to be huge. Now, if you've not read the Thrawn books, you might be wondering, what do the Grisk want, or more specifically, the Grisk hegemony, which was the government. Well, as very warlike creatures, their goal is colonization and enslavement. They had the ability to bend the minds of their subjects to their will, making the victims willing to serve and die for the Grisk cause. Considering how powerful they were, it took a remarkably small amount of Grisks to turn entire planets to their will, but it was only during the reign of the Empire where they began making enormous technological strides that saw them advance into the Outer Rim territories, and now that the Empire's gone, a huge invasion is sure to come as they're going to seize any opportunity. Now, it is worth noting that Thrawn warned Palpatine and Vader of the damage the Grisk could do, but Palpatine in his arrogance told Thrawn that the only solution was to betray the Chiss, overthrow the Ascendancy and take it over. But now Thrawn, and I guess our allies, have to think of something else. In the past I said that we're witnessing a canon retelling of Heir to the Empire, but in actuality, we're witnessing something 100 times more epic, and if Timothy Zahn is going to be consulted, then we're going to end up with a Mando-verse that combines some of the best minds at Lucasfilm. It's also worth bearing in mind this endgame style event is also going to include Boba Fett, Luke, Ahsoka, and all of our allies that have been built up across these shows. There are of course question marks along the way, and as I said, I don't see the big Grisk event happening until at least season 4 of The Mandalorian. But there are questions, like the role of Grogu going forward, what his future will hold, and as for Din, maybe the purpose of bringing all of these clans of Mandalorians together in the show is to eventually unite them, so Mandalore is one united force by the time of the Grisk War. But what I am saying is, I can imagine there being many twists and turns along the way, and it's not known what exactly Lucasfilm have in mind, but the fact that the unknown regions are present in all 3 upcoming iterations of this story gives us a pretty massive clue. I've been meaning to make this follow-up video for quite a while now, but as soon as they dropped the Ahsoka synopsis and I saw the unknown threat, I knew immediately I had to make it. D23 might have held some disappointing news regarding the Bad Batch delay and Mando Season 3 being pushed back to an unspecified date, but we did get some awesome trailers, and having gone into the expo without expectation, I must say I was very pleased, and when it comes to The Mandalorian, I can't wait to see Jon and Dave's vision unfold. But what do you guys think of the theory? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, share where you think the Mando-verse is headed. If you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, why not subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will finish by showing you a segment of those Mando Season 3 leaks in case you missed them. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you always. So plot point number 2 is probably, in my opinion, the most interesting one. They say there's an episode where Grogu and Din travel to the border area of the unknown regions. A mysterious tall hooded man tells Din that he knows of a planet with legends of Yoda species. He says it's a really creepy episode, but in case you're worried, it's not the Yoda species homeworld, but rather home to a colony of dark side Yoda species. They look sickly pale green, they don't speak, and have ghostly blue eyes. Now, as soon as I read this, I needed a moment to take this all in. So you're telling me we're going to see some more Yoda species. We know that Dave Filoni follows in George Lucas's line of keeping the Yoda species scarce, so including them is a bit risky, but I think it's going to serve the plot. It's all well and good because they're not revealing the Yoda species homeworld nor the name of the species, but rather a colony of darkside users of the Yoda species on an unknown world. Now, in my opinion, that's going to be so awesome, but my question is, what is the point of it? What is the purpose of Grogu and Din going to this planet? Is Din trying to bring Grogu back to his own species, or maybe just trying to get in touch with them? In either case, it doesn't go well, and the plot leak says this colony of darkside Yoda species are called the Black Drinkers because they drink a poisonous black broth. So after seeing these so-called black drinkers, Din and Grogu get the hell out of there, and one of the big reasons is they try to take Grogu. And this brings up a question of how many planets with Yoda species on it are there out there. They have a mysterious secret homeworld, but this opens up the possibilities of colonies on multiple planets, and it's fascinating to me that it's in the unknown regions. And speaking of those, the mysterious hooded man tells Din to be careful so close to the unknown regions, as there are rumors that strange ships like no one's ever seen before have been spotted in the area, and ships have been vanishing along the border. Now, 2 thoughts come to mind. Are they finally tying it into Thrawn, the Chiss Ascendancy, and the Grisk, which is the canon version of the Yuuzhan Vong? Or could this be a different faction of the Imperial Remnant connected to the Sith Eternal that could also be part of the cloning facility?